What is the trajectory of the Georgia Bulldogs football program? Not just talking about 2026, but if we dial it into 2026, what does that mean? We're going to talk about all that and much more on this edition of the How About That Dogs Cast. And off the top, I'm just going to take us right back to the glory days. 2021, 2022, Dogs on top. There was a stretch there of games that it was like 40 some odd games, 43, 45, something like that, where the Dogs just bludgeoned opponents. Like the 2021 season, I remember thinking back on it and thinking, oh man, this team looks great. This defense looks amazing, but golly, man, I just kept waiting for something to happen, waiting for that other shoe to drop. And it never did. There was the bump in Atlanta in the SEC championship game, but then the Dogs went right back out, corrected that error, and claimed the national championship. Then in 2022, after being crazy high off the 21 ride, we couldn't believe that it would be any better, and it was, because the Dogs went undefeated and destroyed, obliterated TCU in the biggest college football playoff bowl victory ever. Like the biggest margin on record. Might have been any bowl game. My memory is a little shady on that. But the point is, the Dogs were an absolute machine in 2021 and 22. And in the years since, it's insane to think that, especially given the shifting sands of college football, that any program, Georgia or anybody else, was going to be able to sustain that level of dominance, because that is a level of dominance that is rarely glimpsed. And of course, things shifted back. As things shifted in college football, Georgia had to adjust, and they have done a really good job of adjusting. But we are now to the point where the noise is so loud. It's been 4 years since the Dogs won a national title. It's been 3 years since they won in the playoffs. By the way, Kirby Smart's record in the college football playoff is 5-3, in case anybody forgot. It's not like he forgot how to do it. Just saying. But anyways, the Dogs, of course, are not at the level of 2021 and 2022. Not from a depth perspective, not from an overall talent perspective. Maybe at certain positions, you could point at it and say wide receiver, maybe. So people are really starting to take a critical look at what it is Georgia is. What is the trajectory of this program? Now, I understand that on its face, this is just kind of a silly concept. Like, why are we even discussing this? Georgia has won back-to-back SEC championships. The SEC is, without question, the deepest league in college football. Top to bottom, no other league compares to it. Now, Georgia is responsible for the SEC's last 2 national championships, but the fact that another league won those national championships doesn't speak to the league. It speaks to those individual teams in an individual matchup that they were able to become victorious and win the title. So, people are wondering, where is Georgia headed? Not just for 2026, but over the long haul. Will they be able to continue to recruit the way they are? Will they be able to continue to win the way they are? Will they continue to be a championship caliber program? I think what we have to do is look at recent history. Now, there are a couple of things that I want you to keep in mind as we have this discussion this evening. The first is, I've been telling you for months, and now you are hearing other people out there say it, that the Dogs in this era of NIL and transfer portal are different in 2026. Because relative to everyone else, Georgia is deeper. And what makes that depth even more powerful as a level up tool is that Georgia didn't go rent these guys. Georgia has recruited them, developed them, kept them in the system through the continuity of the program, and now they are about to unleash them on the rest of college football. here in 2026 and over the next couple of years. So going into the year, and you heard Kirby say it at SEC Media Days last week, Georgia's depth relative to everybody else is just different. It's better. And I've been saying this is the kind of thing that is going to matter for Georgia. As you get through this season, we all understand it's a 9-game SEC schedule. We know that Georgia's playing Georgia Tech out of conference. Then you have the SEC championship game, a potential berth in the college football playoff. That is where this depth is going to show up and make a difference for the Dogs. That's where I'm at. That's where I've been. And now you're hearing these other people start to say it. Don't know if they're watching the show. If they are, welcome. But here's the thing I want you to look at as we dial it into 2026, even further than that depth piece. Georgia is not the same as they were in 21 and 22. Who is? But because of that depth piece and because of what I'm about to show you, I'm beginning to think that the trajectory for Georgia, not just this year, but including this year, is going up, not down. And I'll prove it to you right here. Just think back to what we saw at the end of 25. Now, in 2021, the Dogs on the whole averaged 38.6 points per game offensively. They had a victory margin of 31.9, 32 points per game. Again, bludgeoned teams on their way to that championship. Now, the offense was good, not outstanding, not spectacular, really good. And then they had that defense that was squishing other teams and helping that separation happen in terms of margin of victory. Then in 2022, the offense was better and the defense maybe not quite as good, but still the team collectively absolutely dominant. The Dogs averaged over 41 points a game offensively that season and won by a margin of 26.8, 27 points per game over the course of that undefeated season. There were only a couple of games the entire way that were ever even close. Obviously, the Ohio State game, the struggle at Missouri, but they escaped. They remained undefeated. And we're talking about the average here. So now, those were the championship years. If you look at 2023, the way that shook out was their margin of victory actually went up under Coach Bobo and Carson Beck, even though they didn't really have Brock Bowers or Ladd McConkey the majority of that year. The Dogs won by an average margin of victory of 27.8, 28 points a game, 4 touchdowns, and 4 extra points. And they just happened to not win the one game they needed to win because it was a 4-team system. And then the Dogs just took that and went to the Orange Bowl and destroyed Florida State by 60 points. If the Dogs were in that tournament, maybe they would have won it, but they weren't. They lost the wrong game. 2024 happens. There's turnover. Got to rebuild the offensive line, all of that. Then we get to 2025, where they still won the SEC in 24. Then in 25, they win the SEC again with an average margin of victory for the season of 14 points, so 2 touchdowns. Now, offensively, they averaged 32.1 points per game last year. The number I want you to pay attention to, though, is starting in November throughout the rest of the year, the Dogs, they were winning by an average of 20 points per game. So 14 points per game over the whole season. But if you just start from November and move to the end of the year, the margin of victory actually went up. And by the time they got to Atlanta and played Alabama in the SEC championship game, there was no doubt who the best team in the conference was last year, offensively and defensively. And then, of course, there's the layoff, and you go play the game in New Orleans. Great game. The Dogs still put over 30 points on the board. They don't get the W. But Kirby's talked about that this offseason. Did it matter? We've got to figure out how to play after having that layoff, as long as the layoff is part of the story here. So they know what they have to do. But what I want to do is get you to look at the average scores here, starting with Ole Miss and then ending with Ole Miss. Over that stretch, the Dogs had the offense in high gear. The exception there would be Georgia Tech. It's always kind of a weird one for Georgia Tech. Being a rivalry game, you never quite know what you're going to get. But that team, to watch them play, just felt like they were ramping up to be at their very best. And if they had just continued playing, who knows how it would have gone. That's not what happened, because that's not the way it's set up. But I think that because this team is set up the way it is, based on that depth that I just discussed, I think that as we head into 2026, the short-term trajectory of this team is one that could be very, very dangerous. Because just off the cuff, I think it's fair to say that the defense we're going to see here for the Dogs in 2026 is probably going to be the best defense since that 2022 team. I think it's fair to say that in terms of the next draft that's held in the NFL, the Dogs will be better represented off of this defense than in any year since 2022. I think that the defense is kind of holding the rope right now. Georgia's going to be good because that defense is going to be good. I think we all feel pretty confident about that. And that doesn't take anything away from the offense. I'm just saying that's the baseline. But now, if this offense can pick up where it left off at the end of last year, and I know, new team, new year, got it. But if they can continue that positive growth that we were seeing at the end of the year there, where they could move the ball and score the ball and still remain really deadly in the red zone, they could run the football when they wanted to. If they can just keep that momentum going, and then you pair it with this defense that I think we're going to see, then this team becomes real dangerous real quick. It's like at a different level. So why would this happen? Well, detractors, the very first thing they're going to say is that, well, we don't know who's going to play wide receiver. Fair. Like Kirby said at Media Days, like I've been saying for months, keep doubting them. I think you're going to be surprised at what that wide receiver room's going to do. But getting specifically, there are a few voices out there in the national media that have had something to say about this recently. They say, well, Georgia's going to be pretty good anyway. This would be Cole Cubelic of ESPN. Georgia's going to be pretty good anyway because you have a quarterback that gives you a run threat and a physical run threat at times. I know you don't want to live on that, but you have an offensive line that can be dominant. I think it's the best offensive line in the SEC going into this season. That's no small statement, but it's not a surprise because Georgia's bringing back 4 of 5 starters, essentially. And they're deep. And they're physical and athletic. So if you're looking at what Georgia's going to hang their hat on this year on the lines of scrimmage, which everybody knows the SEC is a line of scrimmage league, they're going to start right there with that offensive line. And why wouldn't you? That means that Georgia's going to run the football. But you can't be one-dimensional. You have to be able to do more than one thing. And that brings us back to that question of, well, who's Gunnar going to throw it to? And there are still people out there who want to say that Gunnar Stockton's just not a very good passer. Well, defend that position if you want to. But let's just address the wide receiver thing for a second. Georgia had some playmakers walk out of Athens. Colby Young, Noah Thomas, Oscar Delp, Zach Branch. Now, what did Zach Branch do last year? All he did was lead the SEC in terms of catches with 81, 811 receiving yards, and he put it in the end zone 6 times. That's a lot of production. And he did it in a way that utilized his skill set the best. You get the ball to him in a hurry. You let him do what he does, go be electric, and that's exactly what they did. And people want to bang on the fact that Gunner's not throwing the ball down the field and that you're not sending Branch on a 9 route down the sideline and just hanging it up deep to him. That's because that's not what he's good at. That's not his best game. His best game was to get it to him and let him make a play for you. I'm not the only one saying this. Yes, Branch is gone. Yes, they have to replace him, but I want you to pay attention to that end part there. They used him in the way that he was best to be used. He was a playmaker with the ball in his hands, so put the ball in his hands. And that's what they did. Who's saying it outside of me? How about Greg McElroy of ESPN? He's looking at Zach Branch prior to last year, and he's saying, man, is he really going to be a third down go-to guy? Do you want him ripping that dig over the middle? No. And sure enough, that's what he was. That's what McElroy said. So I kind of trust their evaluation, Georgia's evaluation of Branch. I trust their scheme, Kirby's scheme, Bobo's scheme. I think Bobo, much to the chagrin of many Georgia fans, I think he does a really good job. Now that's Greg, because he understands what it is Georgia's trying to do, what it was Bobo was doing. Why are they throwing the screen so often? Because their most dynamic playmaker does best when you put the ball in his hands quickly and you let him go make plays for you. Seems simple, right? Why take the risk of getting sacked, dropping on a 5 or 7 step drop while he runs a post route, which inherently is a more difficult play to complete? Why do that than just throw it to him right now and let him get 5 yards or 3 yards and then make a guy miss and get another 7 and move the chains? Why not do that? And that's what Georgia did. And all it did was earn them a 1-loss regular season and an SEC championship and yet another college football playoff invitation where, oh, by the way, they didn't play in the first round, played in the second round where the competition's tougher. I'm not the only one saying that Georgia's offense looks like it's moving in the right direction. You've got Cole Cubelic out there going, that offensive line is going to be good. That quarterback, he's a player. And you've got McElroy going, I don't know what they got at wide receiver, but I trust them. Because look at what they just did with Zach Branch. So if Georgia is on an upward trajectory, what does that look like? What's going to make it happen for them in 2026? Why would I believe that they're going to be able to continue what they started at the end of 2025? Well, it starts with Gunnar Stockton. Let's be honest. This is the young man's 5th year in Athens. This is his 2nd year as a starter. And he's going to have an opportunity to go win his 3rd SEC championship. Gunnar Stockton was really, really good in 25. 2,800, almost 2,900 passing yards, 24 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 70% completion rate. He added 460 yards on the ground, plus another 10 touchdowns. Was a Heisman finalist. Was all of the awards, Maxwell Award, a finalist, right down to the end for all of those as well. He was a champion. He did everything Georgia needed him to do to win in 2025. So what in the world would make you think that he's going to be anything less than better than what he was last year? He knows how to play in the league now. That was the one thing he didn't have. He's done it in the most pressure cooker situations. Think about the big games that he won with everybody watching: Tennessee, Ole Miss, Texas. Put him in position to win in the Sugar Bowl. Everybody on that team knows who the leader is. They know what they've got in Gunnar Stockton, and they're going to go fight with him every Saturday. They see how hard he works, and he's going to lead them this year. Gunnar Stockton has everything that Georgia wants him to be, and it's all of those intangibles that are going to be the difference maker here. He's tired of saying, man, we had a bad taste in our mouth. He wants to go win the big game because he knows that's what's expected at the University of Georgia. He loves the University of Georgia. He wants to win for the state and for his school and for his teammates. Gunnar Stockton, regardless of where he ends up at the end of the year on whoever's preseason, postseason award lists or all of that, I have every confidence that he is going to do more than enough to make Georgia not only competitive, but keep them right in the middle of this championship chase here inside the conference. And if you do that, then you're going to have an opportunity to go play for the big thing in the college football playoff. So the thing that I'm counting on most to lift this offense as they were finishing 25 into 26, the thing that I'm going to lean on here is that continuity at the most important position on the football field, which is quarterback. Experienced, talented, hungry. He's seen it all. I just think this year is the year that he's going to right some of those things that didn't get right last year. He's already corrected a couple of those mistakes, and now he is working to make sure that they don't happen again, and he can carry that forward. So Gunnar Stockton, that's reason number one. I think this thing's going to continue on an upward trajectory. What's the other thing? Well, it's exactly what Cole Cubelic was talking about. It's that offensive line. The best in the conference. This is a line of scrimmage league. If you were going to win, you had better win in the trenches. Georgia has the best line in the conference. I think they're going to be good enough to compete or be considered for the Joe Moore Award, which is the national award for the best offensive line. They are deep, they are young, and yet they are experienced. What goes hand in hand with this offensive line? Well, of course, it's going to be this running back room. You know what you have in that offensive line, and with these backs. Chauncey Bowens looks like a new back. I'm sure he's the same great back, but physically, he looks like he is ready to have a huge year for Georgia. And of course, you know he's not alone. Nate Frazier right there with him. And yes, we know that there's been some damage to the room in terms of injury and availability, but this is still a very deep group. Dwight Phillips Jr., Bo Walker, Jay Lamar, they're all in there. They're all ready to go. They have bodies here. They have playmakers here, and you have to lean on this group. Between that offensive line, road grading and blowing holes open for the running backs, and then settling back into pass pro when Georgia wants to go play action. That is the meat and potatoes of this offense, plus the threat that Gunnar gives you. Maybe he pulls the ball and runs it. Maybe you pressure him, but he breaks out of the pocket and picks up the first down anyway. Offense doesn't have to look the same year over year. It's going to look different based on who you have on the field. So maybe you don't flip it out the branch for a 3-yard pass and then he gets 6 more for the first down. Maybe that becomes Nate Frazier. Maybe it becomes Dwight Phillips. Maybe it's one of those tight ends that we're not thinking about right now. Maybe they become that person. Or maybe it's just Gunnar getting it done with his legs. Whatever it is, there are other ways to skin a cat. And we're going to find out what that is. But I think the options are there. And that's why I'm putting this trajectory the way I am. I think it's there. So the offense, first is Gunnar, then it's that offensive line and the run game. That's where everything starts on the offensive side. But what else is it? Remember what I said about that 21 team. They only averaged 38.6 points per game. Georgia was close to that last year, but what was the difference? The defense that they were playing with in 21. And I've already said that this defense here in 22, in my opinion, is the best that Georgia's had since, here in 26, is the best they've had since 2022. Is it going to be as great, as generational as that 21 team? That's highly unlikely. Let's call it impossible. Every person that played on that defensive team in 21 wound up getting drafted, and 6 or 7 of them have broken the bank this offseason in the NFL. So that's a special unit. But this group here in 26, they're as good as anything Georgia's had since then. Better than anything Georgia's had since then. So the offense isn't going to have to do it by themselves. They get to shake hands. Just like we shake hands on the show here with the Patreon page over at How About Them Dogs Plus. All the extras, all the bonus material, all of the opportunity to win the giveaways, it's over there. Take advantage of this offer before it goes away. Jump in, get access to everything. I think you're going to love it. This defense that we're talking about here in 2026, front to back, is star-studded and loaded with playmakers. I'm not going to get into just a defensive breakdown here because we totally could. You've heard me do it before. Ellis Robinson, let's cut half the field off. Between him, KJ Bolden, and maybe Khalil Barnes at star, let's just take half the field away. Okay, offense, can you run the ball? No. Now you've got a quarter of the field that you can play with. That'll make your defense pretty good. What about Raylen Wilson? Back, veteran, crazy talented, hungry, and the heartbeat of this defense. A man in the middle who knows what it's supposed to look like to play physical and say, I'll be damned if you're going to do what you think you're about to do, because we aren't going to let you. That's what Raylen's bringing. That edge and attitude. And he's got all the physical tools to back it up. And then you look at the line up front. We talk about the line of scrimmage. This being a line of scrimmage league. You've got Elijah Griffin, preseason, All-SEC, preseason All-America, ready to take that next step. He's not alone. He's getting most of the buzz. He's not alone along that defensive front. Quintavious Johnson, Gabe Harris, Xavier McLeod, Agboko. There are players here. JJA. This unit has the ability to squish opposing offenses the way that 22 and 21 defense did. And that's going to create that separation in the margin of victory for these dogs. Because pick your poison on offense, let the defense squish them, and now history doesn't rhyme, but I mean, it's not exactly the same, but it's very, very similar. This team in 26 has the potential to not be a carbon copy of the 21 or 22 team, but it's going to look real familiar. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it's going to resemble what we saw from that 21 and 22 team in a lot of ways across the board. We're not done. The linebackers, Chris Cole, they keep talking about who's going to rush the passer. I keep telling you, Chris Cole, Zayden Walker, Gabe Harris, Quintavious Johnson, Isaiah Gibson. I could go on. Chase Linton. They're players. Maybe the rest of the country doesn't know them yet, but they are there. They are capable, and they are ready. And then on the back end, the guy that everybody knows, KJ Bolden. I've talked about KJ already. An amazing player. The best safety in the SEC, maybe in the country. And yet I know he can and wants to do more. Be an impact player that changes games. He said as much from the podium, and he's also said that this group is hungry and that they want to go win this thing because that's what you do at Georgia. Now, do words guarantee that they're going to go get a championship here in 26? No. But I'm telling you, when you look at this team, when you see them on the field, I want you to remember 21 and 22, because it's not just the defense. Let's not forget that special teams unit. There are athletes all over this team. The special teams unit at Georgia this year are going to be nice. Punter, I understand Brett Thorson walked out the door. They're going to be fine. Kicker, Peyton Woodring, absolute money. And they've got athletes to run and cover. So between that defense, a special teams unit that can win you football games, and an offense on a trajectory that I think is going to look a lot like the end of the 2025 season, this Georgia team here in 2026 is dangerous. But even with all that said, there's more to it. And that's the intangible part here. Kirby hears it. They can say they don't. But Kirby let the cat out of the bag. He let it slip just a little bit at SEC Media Days when he said, they were asking about the wide receivers, and Kirby said from the podium, I love it when you ask. I love it when you doubt them, because now I get to use that for motivation. Is there anybody in college football right now that knows how to turn the screws on his program the way Kirby Smart does when it comes to motivation. You'd be hard-pressed to find it. Everybody knows the 7-5 joke with Nolan Smith and that crew. This is a good football team. They're going to be dangerous. And all they have to do is remember who they are. And I think they do. The hunters. That killer instinct that Raylen Wilson might have, or that KJ Bolden might have, or that Gunnar Stockton might have. Remember that. Remember that's who you are. That's what you come from at the University of Georgia. And that the man that you play for, that's what he lives and breathes. You strike them, and you strike them, and you strike them. You take that helmet and strike them. That's how you get respect. That's Kirby Smart. That's going to be this team in 2026. And they are going to be a whole lot of fun to watch. The Georgia Bulldogs are on a trajectory that's up right now. Just because the rest of the country don't see it yet doesn't mean it's not true. When you watch this team, remember what those championship teams looked like in 21 and 22. And be honest with yourself. I think you're going to see a team on the field in 26 that looks the most like those 21 and 22 teams, more like those teams than any version that you've seen of Georgia since then. And remember, it's this way because Kirby Smart has built it this way. Depth, quality depth, unlike anybody else in the country. A veteran team, even though they are the youngest roster in college football. That's mastery of the system by a coach who, for my money, is still the number one coach in college football. And we are going to see the results of that on the field here in 2026. I have no doubt. Go Dogs!
Told him, how about them fucking dogs? That's what I told him.